All right. Angela, you just got back from Michigan, so let's get into it. I want to hear what we're talking about today. What y'all got?
Kudos to Leonard Charlemagne McKelvey and also to Kamala Harris. They did a fantastic interview that I got to see yesterday. So I do want to talk about that.
Well, y'all, there's been some developments on the elections front, elections law rulings in Georgia. And Tiffany, I think like you, I would like to address the environment we find ourselves as it relates to the political violence. As we lead into election, this is going to be about surviving Election Day and surviving the aftermath.
That's a super serious issue for me. It's very personal to me, and I'll tell you guys why when we get into that in the episode. But I'm glad that you brought that up, Andrew, because I definitely want to talk about that. Can I say we're going to get into all of this now? Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media.
Welcome.
Welcome home, y'all. It's episode 45, the same age as me on this podcast, almost the same age as Angela, the same age as Andrew.
Yeah, baby, 45.
45,
May
where
be
it's
better than the
live.
presidency of the 45th.
But you look 23, Angela.
I mean,
You do, girl.
we
You
tried.
do.
We tried.
You do,
I thought you were going to correct me, tell me your real age, and
We
then
already
I
went
was
through
going to
the real
say, but
age.
23
We
is
went through
better.
that.
Anyway,
It's
cute.
Native Land
I thought he
Pod,
was
as
actually
y'all
throwing
already know.
shade.
No, friend, I'm trying to take you back to a moment in time when you were in an interview with someone and that comment was made.
Tiff.
Well, it would not be the show if Andrew did not throw some shade. Anyway, let me finish
Come on,
introducing
friend.
y'all. I'm Tiffany Cross here with the Rowdy Rattler, Andrew Gillum, and the dopest MC and a former
Get it,
Jet
friend?
Beauty
Yo,
Center of the
yo.
Week, Angela Rye.
Used to love them Jets.
Oh my God. Tiff, I actually think you
beautiful
wanted to be
black
a Jet
people.
Beauty of the Week. I didn't want to be on the.
I wish, girl.
I wanted to be on the
wish.
cover of Jet. I don't think that's going to
I
happen.
wanna be
ain't seen
both.
this. Yes. Okay.
Do
I
a
think
whole
Tiff was what? Miss New Atlanta, Miss
Miss
Atlanta?
I was
New
Miss
Atlanta.
Beckwith Hall. I was Miss
Oh, okay.
Beckwith Hall, for the record,
Oh,
at
Beckwith.
CAU.
Okay, great.
We need
great.
to, can we
Anyway.
throw that picture up in this episode? That would be excellent.
Oh, for sure. Nick, I'll send you that picture, and I would like it dropped, and I would like it up in the corner during the entire episode, please. Can I just say that I really miss you guys, and I'm looking forward to being with you guys. Angela, when am I seeing you?
Guess what? We just announced the Bring It Home tour right in time for
Bring it home.
Election Day, which is just around the corner. You guys know that we count down every single week. So we will be in Detroit, right by Pistons Land this weekend. We're very, very excited to be there to really bring it home, to ensure that we get out the votes. That is the first day of early voting in Michigan. We have some special guests, some that you all have seen before on this podcast and some that you have not. So that will be our first stop, Tiff. It's this Saturday, which is, what is that date? October
I think it's the 18th, the 19th?
19th.
The 18th.
One of these days. No, it's definitely the 19th. It's October
The
But it's
19th.
definitely on
19th.
Saturday, yo.
It's
definitely on
October
Saturday, yo,
19th. This is why we don't
All right.
schedule.
So come holler at us the date swap. We'll see you in the date swap on Saturday, October 19th. We look forward to seeing
So
you guys
cold
there
and
at
deep.
Piston Land.
Come
Can't wait
see
to
us,
see y'all.
y'all.
What up, though?
What up, though? Okay, so as we just talked about, you guys, I really got to sit down and be proud of a really incredible moment in Detroit yesterday. As you all know, Kamala Harris is running neck and neck to Donald Trump in Michigan. And there was an incredible idea put together to do a radio-based town hall with Black men, questions being asked by a Black man, Charlemagne the God, and questions being asked by Detroit residents. Everything from the economy to reparations to the plan to get folks out of poverty and into the middle class of Kamala Harris right after she rolled out her plan for Black men. She first talked about this on an interview with Roland Martin, our friend Roland Martin on Roland Martin Unfiltered. She rolled that plan out and she continued to talk about that plan with Leonard yesterday. And I got to tell you guys, it was really, really impressive. I think that my favorite moment in that interview was also 1.5 billion social media impressions later. My favorite moment was watching her engage with these Black men, a faith leader in Michigan who talked about the importance of outreach to the faith community, her name dropping her own pastor, and even getting right a moment where we've seen someone else who claims Blackness and feigns Blackness, who didn't know that when you say God is good, the response is
All the time.
And Kamala Harris nailed that as well. So I think it was really, really powerful. I know we're going to run a clip later in this program, but I'd love to hear what you all thought. I thought it was a really good interview, super timely, and it looks like it was going over really, really well. We should also talk about mainstream media's response to this. I look forward to hearing y'all's thoughts. Yeah.
I mean, I think, I'm kind of looking at this in the larger context of her outreach to Black men. Because she's really done, I think, a really impressive job with that. We talked last week when she sat down with All the Smoke. Of course, you just talked about she sat down this week with Charlemagne. She sat down with Roland Martin Unfiltered. So, I'd love to acknowledge that she is going into places and meeting voters where they are. And so I hope that's well received. Yeah. It's a really different political landscape and political environment now. And not everybody's watching debates. Not everybody's watching legacy media. And sometimes it really is just a clippable soundbite that pops up on your feed. And that's going to be the only place that someone might hear your message. So I think the more places she is, then the more likely it is that people will hear from her message. I would like to get into the meat of what she's offering, because it's not just about showing up and shaking hands and saying a little phrase, even though that has such credo in our community. But I think the actual policies that she's putting forth actually matter. So, Andrew, you're the Black man on the panel. I'd love to hear your thoughts about it.
I'm a Black man and certainly not the voice for all of us, which I think is really where I want to start with this, is her respect enough for Black men to even put an agenda forward, right? And to say, I reject the premise of the question of why aren't Black men with you? I don't take any voting group for granted. I have to go out there, work for it, ask for it, present them a reason to be for me. And quite frankly, even absent that agenda, Black men have been by and large for her as probably the second largest dedicated constituency group of any group out there in America behind Black women supporting Kamala Harris. But the humility that she brought to it, but also the strength, I think, in the conversation by saying, hey, I'm not just here as a mouthpiece. Let me bring it. And in my form of bringing it are these receipts known as a policy agenda for Black men in America. I remember an election not so long ago where the question was asked, what is your agenda for Black America and Black men in America? And the response was, the agenda for the country is the agenda for Black men. And while I love to receive that as the proper answer, we don't have to look at the history books.
Okay.
Disproportionately. Way too many.
Black, when you have communities that are disproportionately impacted by systems, structures in this country, then you absolutely have to have a remedy that speaks directly to them. And I think that's what this agenda does. Angela, I'm sure you probably want to break down a couple of the points that you heard, but I was especially interested in the piece around the small business support for those who want to start new businesses, and that those those loans can be then made into the form of a grant that don't have to be repaid.
1 million loans that are fully forgivable to Black entrepreneurs.
The other thing is a lot of people have been focusing on the graphic they saw that announces her agenda. And there was even an article that was out at NPR a couple of days ago that says Kamala Harris rolls out Black men agenda targeting the legalization of cannabis and making more accessible cryptocurrency. I probably have fumbled this headline, put that picture up for me, but of the NPR headline. And what you will see is, one, this agenda is actually 9 pages long. She doesn't just talk about crypto and cannabis. And furthermore, it wasn't just about the legalization of cannabis. It was actually ensuring that Black men have an on-ramp to get in the cannabis industry, period. Make money from it, not just be penalized for whatever their past uses or distribution of it was. I also think it's important to realize Black folks, to your point, Andrew, are not monolithic. And when you talk about Black people and their on-ramp into the economy and upper mobility, we also have to talk about Black farmers. She does that in this 9-page plan. It's not included in this graphic. So there are a lot of pieces to this. Black folks don't just care about justice reform. We don't just care about voting rights. We don't just care about transportation. We don't just care about the economy. We don't just care about healthcare. We care about all of those things because we are holistic beings existing in this country, and this plan addresses every aspect of those things.
I love that she said, a Black agenda is more than just an agenda around criminal justice reform. criminal justice reform is important, no doubt about it, partially because of the systems and structures that exist that disproportionately target us and impact us and our families. But it isn't the only thing. And I appreciate her, quite frankly, putting economics centerfold, because every Black man that I know, every proud one, wants to work, provide for themselves and for their families. They ain't out here asking, begging for anybody's handout. They want the same opportunities that exist for everybody else. Everyone else, so that we can make a way for ourselves and for the families that we care about and love. So, where can people go?
Andrew. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No. Please go ahead. I was going to ask Angela where people go to get the full agenda.
Was it her website? You can literally go to her website.
I think the Breakfast Club, for those of you who follow, also allowed for greater enumeration of the agenda. And of course, we reference Namecheck Roland Martin Show as another place. But go ahead, Tiff.
And shout out to Ro for getting that interview as well.
That's real.
You were saying something, Andrew, when we were talking before the show started, and you were saying how basically you were like, I'm happy that the mainstream media, non-Black journalists. Yeah, what was
that I heard on television that's more mainstream cable news from white male and Latino hosts or panelists who were saying Kamala Harris presents a black agenda for Black men. And they weren't talking about it in a disparaging way, which is uncustomary to me. I can't, every time before, prior to this point, when I've heard a Black agenda and a Black this, folks have basically set it to the side, patted it on the head before they then ranted in some sort of insult as to why should there be a separate da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, why should there be a separate women's agenda? Why should there be an agenda for Wall Street? Why does all these other constituencies get an agenda, and then when it's referenced that Black men are being prioritized by way of policy change to improve their lives and livelihoods, that it's all of a sudden a problem?
Yeah. I'm kind of torn on how I feel about that. So one, I think the main important thing is Vice President Harris has put forth a solid policy agenda for Black men. There is no more excuse for someone to say she's not speaking to me. What has she done for me? What is she going to do for me? Like, if at this point you are participating in willful ignorance if you continue to spread that mistruth. And we have seen that all across social media. I've heard that in different conversation. So that is the main point. My frustration, I think, Andrew, in legacy media and some of these conversations is they do continue to perpetuate this lie that somehow Black men could cost her the election. And that's just not true.
Agreed.
There are none of these swing states where Black Republicans are great enough in number that they're going to cost her the election. And it's not enough acknowledgement that Black men overwhelmingly are Democratic voters, a progressive group of men who vote Democrat. I think their numbers are just behind Black women. They are. They have voted in the last two elections, I think it was 12% Republican. So just when I say this, I'm not trying to magnify that number. It's a very tiny number. But I did have a conversation over the weekend. I was doing a production, and I did have conversation with some folks who were Republican voters. This is my challenge, because I am looking for someone to present a sound, coherent, logical argument to me about why they support the Republican ticket. And every single time, I have not met that person. Yeah. Every single time, it's someone who is not only uninformed of the issue, but has not made the slightest effort to get informed on an issue. Some of these things you can simply Google, guys. It's just not true. Like, they literally, it's because somebody said something or I heard this. I'm also a bit offended as a Black woman, and having my entire life dealt with Black men. I'm offended at this notion that when you want to know how Black people feel, you're going to go to a barbershop or a beauty salon. That's such a tired, trite rollout. And as long as legacy media continues to traffic in that, this is why legacy media numbers are shrinking. Because when we don't see ourselves and the depth of ourselves reflected, then we tend to tune that out. So I would beg people, no matter what the host looked like, I would beg people to reach a little deeper and appreciate who we are as a community and the depth that we have as a community. This is no diss to barbers. Like, barbers are taxpaying citizens. They have something to say. But when you want to know how Black people feel, you go on to barbers, celebrities, people who and that it ends there. And I will say, frustrating.
Tiff, I appreciate that point. And just two quick things. One, I do want to lift up the fact that the barbershop experience for Black men is very unique. It is oftentimes it is probably the one point at which the different strata of us find ourselves in shared place, shared environment. And I think the beauty salon is frankly very similar in that it is a cultural experience. That being said, it is not in and of itself the mouthpiece or the job of the barber who's doing the listening and sometimes responding to then become the representative voice of what Black men in America think. Nobody is that simplistic. And my second point is your point around the Black folks who haven't been able to make the compelling argument. I said this many episodes ago when we were talking about people who were Black and voting Republican. And my point was 50 Cent, his budget looked a whole lot different than Andrew Gillum's, right?
Yeah.
And Joe on the street. And so he may hear from Trump a tax cut, and that may be sufficient enough for him to forgive, not consider, release all the rest that the man has done and had to say, because at the end of the day, this man is voting for his bank. And so we should, particularly in celebrity culture, we have to really be curious and pull back the layer as to why it is that a person may feel the way they feel or may be caping and the way in which they're caping, because their agenda might not match ours.
Yeah.
And by the way, okay, that's your business, good for you, but you don't need to be giving me political advice, because you and I aren't aligned on the same thing. What may be good for you may be terribly harmful for me. And so I think we're a complex enough community to recognize we've all got different motives. I do think we share a lot in common. First of all, our humanity, that box has to be checked first. If you can't see me as human, if you can't respect me, if you think my body can be thrown and slain about as if I'm some kind of rag doll at your leisure or pleasure, then that's it for me. That I am a single issue voter when it comes to my humanity. If you can't see that, we can't get to the rest of it.
I want to hear
that's
some
what
sound.
I think keeps us so much connected.
Yeah, I completely agree. I want to hear some sound from the interview, because I think that was the unique thing about Charlamagne's interview, is that it was interactive. Like, other people could ask questions.
It was really good.
Really quickly before we go to that, Angela, you and I were a part of a conversation that I will respect the people involved in the conversation by keeping most of the substance of it quiet. But someone made a comment like, oh, but who cares about the plight of the Black man? And it struck me so that I asked, well, we care about the plight of the Black man, but what does caring about the plight of the Black man look like to you, and who is doing the caring? And it opened up this beautiful wealth of Black men sharing what it looked like to them to be cared for. And people reference things about family. They reference things about their thoughts about the healthcare system. Like, if I'm going in because my knee hurts and the doctor's like, yeah, well, how long you been doing crack a year? You know, different things. And their family dynamic, how they're treated at work. It was such a beautiful exchange of open feelings. Angela, you remember this, of course. And I just want to open that space up here to our brothers. If you're watching this, I would love to hear from Black men. What does it look like to care for you, and who is doing the caring? Because we have to, in our community, it does seem to be some animus sometimes when it comes to our politics, when it comes to our building family units. So I just want to hear from you brothers and give y'all a space to express that. Or drop a video if y'all want. Yeah, Andrew, go ahead.
To add to your question, also, what assumptions are made about you that folks ought to suspend with from heretofore? So, for instance, most Black men I know want to do the caring and not be cared for. And the way in which it lands with me, right? I'm the one who will shoulder a lot of that stuff in my household, because I don't want to burden my wife. I don't want to burden the family with the things that I feel like I need to take care of for us. And so add to that, as you're responding, are there assumptions that are made about you as a Black man inside our community and outside that you would like to put to rest?
Well, there's a few things. Y'all went so many places, and I want to chime in on some of these things. But one thing I just want to acknowledge, to going back to something you raised about the mainstream media's response, or really like the trafficking in the conspiracy theory of Black men overthrowing the government, joining with the insurrectionists to support Donald Trump in historic numbers. The thing that I think is fascinating is, and I was finding myself really caught in a conundrum yesterday, finding out that Leonard's interview with Kamala ran in full on CNN and MSNBC. I was elated by that and also troubled by that. And the conundrum was, however this interview goes, you're going to rest the full responsibility of that on Black men and on Kamala Harris, right? And so I was like, I wanted to celebrate the fact that it was getting this much attention, but found myself being remarkably worried about it when I heard about it later, because it does feel like there's this moment in the interview that we actually didn't pull where Leonard says to her,
President Obama was out there last week waving his finger at Black men. When are Liz Cheney and Hillary Clinton going to wave their finger at white women? When are Bill Clinton and Joe Biden going to wave their finger at white men? Because 52% of white women voted for Trump in 2016. 55% voted for Trump in 2020. They all voted against their own interests. When the finger waving going to start at them?
Instead of saying, yeah, they do need to do that, Kamala says, well, and to that point, I am so happy with the amount of Republican support that I get. And I'm like, yeah, but that ain't the point. The point is everybody needs to be.
She made the right point.
No. And I'm not saying there's no wrong answer there, right? But it's like, you do need to have everybody who has influence in their micro and their macro spheres of influence talking to each other.
That's real.
Especially like Geraldo Rivera, endorsed her yesterday after this interview. Like, go talk to your Hispanic conservative leaning friends now, Geraldo. I don't really need to see what are the things called?
Billboards?
Thank you. In my community with Geraldo on it. It probably is not going to move me. And then the other thing that I wanted to say that irked me about yesterday is, it's really hard when you're at this stage in the campaign to know the right thing to do. And so you just like they say on the House floor, you vote your conscience, you do your conscience. Her conscience led her to say, you know what, I can't lose my brothers at any number to this man or to this other person that's running for another colored party that shall not be named on this here show. She said, I'm going to target them in a way that I think uplifts them, to let them know that I do care, right, Tiff? Right, Andrew, to the point you all were just raising. There are some fools out here saying she's pandering. So I'm like, you are damned if you do, damned if you don't. So I refuse to engage in that dialogue and want to instead say, here are all the ways that she's not. Again, the frustration with the NPR headline is it trafficked right into that pandering narrative with the two items they lifted up from her agenda because it was clickbait, not because it was the whole of her agenda. And then the last thing I was going to say, Tim, you brought up this thing about the barbershop. I would really like for white folks to consider all of the many places that they live their lives every day, right? You take your kids to school, you go grocery shopping, you pay your bills, you might go to the post office if your post office in your neighborhood is still working for you. You go to the bank. There are all of these places where our ideologies do intersect and they do conflict. There are all of these places you can go to talk to Black folks. They're the same places you go to talk to white folks and to brown folks. Where do you go for fun? What artists do you listen to? Everybody doesn't have the same ideological bent in those varying areas. I encourage you. Yes, we like to get our hair did. Okay. Yes, the dude like to have his fade. Okay. And he might spray paint it on if it ain't there. Okay. But this is not, I mean, it happens. They even got, units now.
It happens.
To glue that thing on like Trex.
Dudes wearing lace fronts.
You don't have to tell all
now.
the secrets, friends.
Well,
Andrew,
the good one
lace
is, given
fronts.
how you shine and you do not have a unit, but I was just saying that these are
I
real.
like
true.
you
Facts.
like this,
Facts.
Andrew. I like
Facts.
you in
I'm
no
gonna give you
hair.
some
You still
baye.
handsome,
I'm gonna
brother.
give you a
I've had the
baye.
spray on. I'm just going to
Oh,
keep
you
it
do
real.
use the spray?
Yes. No, I
No,
said
he
I
used
had
to.
it during the
Oh,
campaign.
you
On the
did,
campaign
Andrew.
trail.
I wasn't even talking about you, but a hit dog will what?
Holla.
Anyway, the point I'm raising is just that we need to be more dynamic with our interpretations of where Black people are. And if you're confused, producers, if you're confused, campaign staff, if you're confused, man on the street on where to find Black people, we are your resident helpers to find where the Black people are in Native Land Pod. Welcome home,
right
everybody.
next to you.
Right.
Thank you. I
We're
want to say
everywhere.
two things. One, I just want to say, Andrew, I think you look the best you've ever looked. With no hair.
I think he pays you ad money to do this. You do this every 3 shows.
I do.
See, and I was about to go to Angela.
Oh, no,
she
I
interrupted me. Well, she's not gonna like what I say anyway. But Angela, I think you look beautiful today with your big hair.
Big hair don't count.
I love it. And we talking about wearing units. These some hair clips I got in my hair.
All the head dogs hollering on the show. Andrew said, "I'll give you some spray."
I
I got grays.
I do. I can't have tracks on them. I can't.
My hair is
but these are clips. They pop in.
My hair is thinning right here. Y'all see that?
My hair is thinning at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And then back to the topic.
Okay. Anyway, I just wanted to make that point. The other point I want to make, I want to toss to another bite because Angela was making a good point about talk to your people, talk to your community. Yeah. So can we, the New York Times did this video kind of roundtable with white women voters, and Angela dropped it in our group chat, and I took a listen, and I was a bit frustrated with the conversation. But just for the record, these are all women who are now, they are Republican white women voters in Arizona who are now voting for Vice President Harris. Take a listen.
I consider myself an original Republican. We used to refer to Biden and Kamala in our house as the corpse and the cackler.
I am a lifelong Republican of smaller government, lower taxes, not intervening in our lives.
I grew up in the Reagan era, and Reagan was a hero in my home, so he was my hero. I think in this day and age, you really can't say that if someone is pro-choice, they must be liberal.
Abortion is changing the Republican Party this election. Here in Arizona, almost a third of Republicans say they'll support Proposition 139, a state ballot measure that would make abortion legal until about 24 weeks.
I would say 20 years ago, that definitely would not have been the case.
Okay. So this is my thoughts. I want to hear y'all's thoughts on this.
Right?
No. I mean, basically, they're just saying, this is how I always felt, and now I'm voting for Kamala Harris. So this is my challenge. We are not so selfish a people that we can support something that's harming others. Even as Black people, we don't have family in Palestine, but we see what's going on there, and we're like, no, we got to stand in solidarity and hold this administration accountable and push for people to do the right thing. Push for Vice President Harris when she becomes president-elect to do the right thing and call for a ceasefire. We don't have to have somebody in the LGBTQ community in our family to believe in equality and rights and that that people deserve a right to safety. It really effing frustrates me that these group of white women, it's a whole pocket of conservative white women out there who live like this, who have helped create this landscape, who voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and 2020. But now that you're cannibalizing and Frankenstein has come for your rights, now all of a sudden you are on this side of saying, okay, I'm going to vote for Vice President Harris. While I welcome their support, I hope that the conservative white women who are so disillusioned with themselves will take a moment and ask, how often have I been on the wrong side of history and the wrong side of humanity just because something did not impact me personally? And I saw that video and I'm like, this is not my ally. Ain't none of these women my ally. Like, you gonna do the right thing this election, but I can't count on you. If I gotta rest my life in your hands, I'm real shaky right now. So I wasn't so happy with it.
I don't want to be in the bed with them. I'm going to tell you this. I don't want to be in the bed with them.
I hear it.
I want to know if they can just take a moment to take stock of history and ask themselves this question. Or let me ask you this question. Were you there? And if at every single turn, when Black folks, when underserved folks, when people who were voiceless and invisible and all of that in this country needed your help, when we look back at history, were you there? And let me help some of y'all, because I know that history books are being banned in your kids' schools, and the history book that you learned from didn't actually paint an accurate picture. So let me answer it for you. No, you were not there. The answer now is, will you be there? And the answer is, yes, you can. You show better, because if you don't, you're at risk next. So you don't have to look out for me, frankly. The good book tells you to, but you don't have to look out for me. Look out for your damn self, and you will find that in looking out for yourself, you will end up looking out for your neighbor. Don't look out for the needs or the dreams that you have. Look out for the needs you have. Be there. Figure out what it means to stand in the gap. not just for yourself, but for your neighbor. I know that it is hard. I know that you like to look back and reflect and say, damn, what did I do? I know it was easy for you to don a pussy hat and go to the Women's March. I'm telling you, I don't want your damn march. I'm going to need you to show up now. You can march to the polls on November 5th, but if you find your ass marching in January somewhere, me and you going to have a talk, and it ain't going to be nice, okay? That ain't a promise.
You might love it when we call you baby, but we would love to call you ally. So,
yeah, no, I remember that.
Real quick, Andrew, because I know that you want to get in here, but I do think they're helping pave the way for fascism.
Yes.
And so I want to play this quick bite that took place with Charlemagne and Vice President Harris, and then we'll pick this up on the other side of the break. Let's roll that clip.
It's two very different visions for our nation. One mind that is about taking us forward and progress and investing in the American people, investing in their ambitions, dealing with their challenges. And the other, Donald Trump, is about taking us backward.
The other is about fascism. Why can't we just say it?
Yes, we can say that.
Yeah.
Welcome.
No, you all are right about the political violence. One, that video y'all just showed with the women was in part violence. I mean, that whole corpse and cackle, I'm still kind of injured by that comment. And I would just say, just parenthetically, and I want to move us aggressively into this conversation on what's happening in political violence. And that's simply saying, in 2016, I don't remember there being all the articles and stuff about 52% of white women voting against a fellow white woman. Mm-hmm. So this whole setup to blame black men, I just want to check y'all before you go there. Not y'all, but y'all out there. Mm-hmm. Before you go there, when we start blaming every other group that keeps, quote, betraying their like person, then I think we got some equity. But right now, to put this at the feet of any black woman or black man, the loss or win of an election, we're not jiving with that. We're the most loyal, and we perform. And talking about loyal, y'all, Trump's supporters are... this week has been crazy because, one, there's the gaslighting around political violence, like our rhetoric has been the reason for it.
Are you concerned about it?
I just want to take a quick look back at what rhetoric looks like and who actually started the violence around political violent rhetoric in this day and age of elections. Roll the clip.
I certainly don't incite violence.
Knock the crap out of them.
I don't condone violence, and I don't talk about violence.
I would have done well, but I would have been boom, boom, boom. I'll beat that.
I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will.
Maybe he should have been roughed up because it was absolutely disgusting what he was doing.
If you see somebody getting ready to throw a tomato, knock the crap out of them, would you? Seriously. I'd like to punch him in the face, I'll tell you. Try not to hurt him. If you do, I'll defend you in court. Don't worry about it.
In the good old days, this doesn't happen because they used to treat them very, very rough. And when they protested once, you know, they would not do it again so easily. We become weak.
The audience hit back, and that's what we need a little bit more of now.
Part of the problem and part of the reason it takes so long is nobody wants to hurt each other anymore, right?
Do you plan on paying for the legal fees of this older gentleman in North Carolina who sucker punched the protester?
From what I understand, he was sticking a certain finger up in the air. And that is a terrible thing to do in front of somebody that, frankly, wants to see America made great again.
It's possible you could help him with legal fees if this man needs it.
I've actually instructed my people to look into it, yes.
Y'all, of course, detestable, hard to take, but that doesn't even get to what he's been saying recently.
Can I just say really quickly what, because for the people who are listening and not watching, that sucker punch moment was in 2016 when one of his rally attendees literally sucker punched this black man who did have both of his middle fingers in the air, who was leaving, and that is not illegal, that is not inciting any violence. He had his middle finger in the air just like this, and an older white man punched him in the face.
And that's where Trump says, I've instructed my staff to look into his legal defense, right? And then just this week, Trump has threatened his political enemies, saying that the enemies within, including Adam Schiff, a member of the U.S. Congress and candidate for the U.S. Senate out of California, was upon the list of domestic enemies to which he would direct, if president, the U.S. military and the National Guard to handle, to take care of, to remove his political enemies. Fascism, man, I wish it captured the totality of what this guy's doing. Y'all, simply, my theory is I think Trump has reckoned with the fact that he's likely not going to win the popular vote and won't win the Electoral College. And he is setting the stage for what he wants his followers to do by way of turning over this election. Well, they got a setback in Georgia this week because the courts said the certification of the elections by the state elections board is not a choice. It is not an option. It is mandatory according to the Constitution of the state of Georgia. That was an important win for us. And the judge went further in a separate court decision and said that hand counting ballots in this 2024 election is too much. We are going to delay that decision till after the election. And I'll just say parenthetically, if there was a Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act still intact, that effort to pass that law this close to the election would never have taken place. And a Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Attorney General's office would have flagged this and basically said that this is electoral interference in an effort to suppress voters. I know y'all got to be alarmed because I'm certainly concerned about what I think is the preface being set for what he wants his followers to do post-election.
Well, before you get into the legal stuff, I want to talk about the physical violence really quickly because and I just want to point this out. The frustrating part of this is after he said the enemy within and talked about using the military, a slew of his sycophants and supporters were across the cable news screen saying, no, that's not what he means. And he's being metaphorical. And then they asked Trump in an interview and he was very clear. No, that is what I mean.
Double down.
I am not for the least minute confused that, of course, his sycophants know that. They are spitting in your face, trying to convince you that it's raining. They know full well who this man is, and they are perfectly okay with him inciting this kind of violence because, like I said, they would rather see this country burn to the ground before they see a black woman run it. That is a frightening time. The media that's talking about this, who are saying things like, oh, well, Trump's rhetoric has taken a dark tone. The fact that we're talking about it like this, instead of saying a man is pursuing office who is a threat to America and threatening Americans, is literally threatening violence and treating it like, oh, it's a dark tone. This is not a dark tone. He is telling you what he's going to do. So please spare me when this happens and everyone says, oh, but this is not America and we can't believe it's happened. He's telling you right now what he'll do. Angela, what you got?
I want to, I was going to pivot to some of the legal stuff. There's a really good article in the USA Today that flags for us to watch certain counties. And these counties are all in battleground states. For those of you at home who are like, listen, all I do is cast my ballot and I don't know the rest of this stuff. The most important thing to understand, regardless of the election, is counties control the election results. Andrew, I know you know this firsthand and have experienced this firsthand. And so what I will say to you is we have been asleep at the switch. There have been folks that have been working to undermine the outcome of elections for many, many years in Republican state-controlled legislatures, these some of these county boards, these commissions. They work to undermine some of these results. The three counties that this USA Today article points out is, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but Cochise County in Arizona. I might be saying it wrong. Cochise County in Arizona. You can take Tiff's version or just look it up when we're done.
I think, because I'm just thinking of the Native Americans.
Yeah.
And I think it's Cochise.
Okay, but I'm going to defer to Tiff on that one. The next one is Fulton County, not in Georgia, Fulton County, Pennsylvania. And then the final one is Spalding County, Georgia. Why is it important to look at this? There's a whole article talking about all of the ways that these counties have been in fights with their legislatures. The one in Pennsylvania, Fulton County in Pennsylvania. Maybe you guys remember hearing about Dominion, the voting machines. There's a whole battle to say that the Secretary of State doesn't have the authority to undermine the voting machines they use, even though there was a company that they were trying to use to audit what the Dominion machines election results were turning out. What I'm trying to tell you is they will convince you that the reason there is a fight The reason why people should get violent is because there is fraud happening and that folks were working to overturn what the actual results were. They have been trying to create situations that undermine the confidence in the voting processes, not just in these 3 counties, but these are 3 of the latest examples. So pay attention. If you all are in battleground states in particular, pay special attention. Google the names of your counties and see what kind of nonsense has probably been happening for over a decade. They've been mad about these since Barack Obama was the president. Okay? So pay attention. Yeah, of course. But I'm saying it was at a heightened alert after he became president. We saw voter ID laws on the books. We saw the elimination of early voting days or a cutting back of early voting days. We saw restrictions on absentee voting. All of those things happened after they found out America could elect a Black president. So pay attention.
And that's right. And Angela, excellent points, both of you. I just want to mention the fall safe that we have some comfort around, y'all, is that with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 states, that every one of the battleground states has at least a Democratic governor or a Democratic secretary of state. And in many of these battleground states, they have both. The state of Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, North Carolina, Georgia, and the governor and the secretary of state are both Republicans, but both have said that they will certify elections and follow the Constitution of the state. Minnesota, obviously, where the vice presidential nominee on the Democratic side, Tim Walz, is from, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and I don't know, y'all, if it's battleground, but after this next clip, you may think so, the state of Texas, where they do not have a Democratic governor. They have a Republican governor and a Republican secretary of state, and they have done everything they can around voter suppression. But they also have a very interesting U.S. Senate race that is tightening.
Oh, that was really something. I have to say, you can't be for the mob on January 6th and for the officers. You can't. And it's not funny because you're a threat to democracy. Sure. I was on the House floor when we went through the votes. I remember when you objected to the results in Arizona. Y'all at home might remember where you were on January 6th, what you were doing. I know where I was and I know where he was. I remember when they told us to reach under our seats for these gas masks. I didn't know we had because they had deployed tear gas in the rotunda. The officers locked all the doors. We barred the doors the president walks through to deliver the State of the Union with furniture that we usually use to hold paper. And I texted my wife, Allie, who was 7 months pregnant with our son, Cameron, and at home with our son, Jordan, who wasn't yet 2. Whatever happens, I love you. And I took off my suit jacket, and I was prepared to defend the House floor from the mob. At the same time, after he'd gone around the country lying about the election, after he'd been the architect of the attempt to overthrow that election, when that mob came, Senator Cruz was hiding in a supply closet. And that's okay. I don't want him to get hurt by the mob. I really don't. This election is his accountability. You cannot just be patriotic when your side wins. If for the first time in 250 years, this project of ours, this shared American project, that we did not have a peaceful transfer of power, the folks responsible have to be held accountable. That's why Liz Cheney has endorsed me, has got involved in this campaign, and is saying to Texans everywhere, do not put Ted Cruz back in a position of authority, because he's done it once, he'll do it again.
One, that was, I thought, extremely brilliant. And for those at home, that was just a clip from the debate that took place in the Texas U.S. Senate race against Ted Cruz. That was Congressman Colin Allred, who provided a brilliant response to Ted Cruz, basically going on and on and on about, I protect law enforcement, and if you break the law, if you do violence, you should be arrested. And basically tried to have it both ways. You can't be for the January 6th folks and also for law enforcement. They came in there and injured law enforcement. So the political violence that we've been talking about, we cannot forget what happened on January 6th. And Congressman Allred was trying to remind the voters of Texas that this guy basically supported in the overthrow. But that's, ladies, what I was getting at about.
Refused to certify Pennsylvania, or was it Arizona? Sorry, Arizona.
Arizona, but again, there are conditions in the U.S. Constitution that will dictate what will happen this time next year, January 5th or 6th next year, when the Congress comes back to Washington, D.C. And all that we are seeing right now in the political climate being perpetuated by Donald Trump and his sycophants is, in my opinion, and I think it's one that's shared, is the setup. This is the lead up. Now we're watching it with our eyes wide open. They were doing it last time. But we didn't, I don't think any of us fathomed that it could have resulted in what we saw on January 6th. But I believe this is the stoking of it again. And Tiff, I know you had something on political violence as well.
Well, I'm glad that we just heard that clip, because we have to keep reminding people what happened on January 6th. The attention span of the American electorate is like that, you know? Yeah. And and I think that's part of their strategy on the right? You know, they're agents of chaos. There are so many things. I always say trying to cover Donald Trump was like trying to catch confetti. There was so much all the time. And if everything is breaking news, then nothing becomes breaking news. We're talking about the courts. That is political violence. We talked about voter suppression. That is political violence. But then it's just that fisticuffs, that hand-to-hand combat. And that is a legitimate thing that causes me great concern. I will tell you guys, my personal concern about it is my brother is a truck driver. And as this election has taken a turn, he has come face-to-face with verbal violence, threats of physical violence to him from other truck drivers, very racist comments on the CL from people. And it just frightens me, because I'm like, my thought is, should Vice President Harris be victorious, which I believe that she will, have we really won? What happens the day after? What happens after inauguration? What happens while she's in office? When we have a significant amount of people in this country who've already decided we will not accept election results that we don't like. And so I know there are all these other things that are of concern, but I'm also literally concerned about just that fisticuffs, like when somebody's like, I don't like this, I don't like you. And we may not be confronted with that. We may not be confronted with that, but it might be an attitude from the flight attendant, a pilot saying they feel threatened because we got on the KDH t-shirt on the plane. It might result in our educators treating our students differently. It just feels like we're going back to a time where people are emboldened to be shitty to us and to invite confrontation from us. And I don't know where we go from here.
I take your point, and I'd like to give you an example of it.
There's signs branding him a divider, even a threat to America.
Are you concerned that you might be stoking more racial violence or more racial discord? Not at all.
It's a question he's faced for years, accused of fanning the fires of hatred.
When you bash immigrants, when you bash refugees, when you say we want to put up a wall, when you say we want to ban all Muslims, it's not responsible for it, but it does cause this cauldron.
President Trump disagrees.
I think my rhetoric is it brings people together.
But does it? The president and his words appearing in scores of police reports and courtrooms. After these two brothers beat a sleeping homeless man in Boston, one of them telling police, Donald Trump was right. All these illegals need to be deported. The victim was in the country legally. And this Cleveland man attacked his African-American neighbors with a knife and then tells police Donald Trump will fix them because they are scared of Donald Trump. And watch this video from Gainesville, Florida. A Latino man is working outside of his convenience store when he says a stranger suddenly bashes him in the head. Moments later, the victim describing the attack.
Hit me in my back of my head, bro. This is for Trump.
After reviewing hundreds of police reports and court records from across the country, ABC News found more than 50 criminal cases where Donald Trump was explicitly invoked in relation to violent acts, threats, or alleged assaults.
That is frightening.
There's the evidence.
That's frightening.
It's so scary.
I mean, honestly, because how do you combat that? And I'll tell you what we've already been through as a people. And I'm so concerned because my brother suffers no fool. He don't always make the best. If somebody is confronting him, like he will stand his ground. Yes. Yeah. And I keep telling him it's not worth it. Like, let them have a last. Every insult don't deserve a response. Let them have a last word if they're saying something. But I'm just so frightened. And I think about mothers out there who are frightened sending their kids to run to the grocery store and you get pulled over by a cop. Or, your babies are out in this world to be subjected to that treatment. Or my co-hosts, our friends, our physical person can be confronted by these people. And I don't know, guys. The Civil War did not begin with the first bayonet shot or whatever. The Civil War started well before that. And it feels like we are in that kind of environment. I mean, I don't know if y'all feel the intensity of that violence, but I do.
This is what he's stoking. This is exactly what he's stoking, and this is exactly what he wants us to feel. And you know what, y'all? I can't wait to, if we ever get there again, go back to the days where elections actually solved election issues, resolve them, rather than it being one stage in the process and the next stage being, can we survive a peaceful transfer of power?
Yeah.
We didn't ever have this question, including, by the way, during Lincoln's first election. We didn't have these questions until Donald Trump decided he was going to parrot, to example what it meant to have a violent transfer of power in America. And now he is, in my opinion, foaming for stage 2 of it. But y'all, we got to win stage 1 first.
You know,
I believe we will prevail in stage 2, but we've got to win stage 1, and that's us getting out and voting overwhelmingly for our choice for president.
You know, I was thinking about like that, as we were watching that video and listening to it, for those of you who are listening, about all the violent attacks. I really was thinking about when I was driving to my Wilberforce University board meeting last week and all the Trump signs I was seeing. And when I was on the phone, I was on the phone with my best friend, and I started I was so upset. I was like, I cannot believe these people. And I know I'm in Ohio, right? Like it's the back roads of Ohio. Like I know what I'm up against, but it was so triggering. And then the very next day when I got to New York, I saw this man. I was going to meet with our friend Alicia. And this man walked back and forth in front of me 3 times wearing a Make America Great Again hat. And I literally felt that same rage, but I was tense, like bracing because I was afraid. Like I was like, what if he recognizes me? Why does he keep walking right back and forth? It was right by the Tiger, Tiff. He walked back and forth 3 times. The first 2 times was just me. Then when Alicia was there, it was one more time. And I was asking Alicia, I was like, what is he doing? And I think really, this is what it is. I'm afraid of what they do when they see other. I don't know. I think that what I was bracing for is, you know, what happens when they see me driving by. They don't know anything about me, but what we do know about Trump supporters is that other is not welcome. And I think that there is this bracing for violence, bracing for some type of verbal assault, bracing for some type of altercation. I'm like, I have had on Kamala stuff going through the airport. What do they do when they see that? Right? Like, it's not like colors and signs and gangs. Like, what is the drive-by for? You know, and I really think that it is fascinating. And they've got to come to terms with the fact that they aren't just standing up for someone who is, you know, who wrote their name on a stimulus check. They aren't just standing up for someone who supported and pushed forth billionaire tax cuts, even to the detriment of the national deficit in this country. This isn't someone who just coddled up and cozied up to world dictators, including Vladimir Putin, is being played like a fiddle by them, but is too dumb to realize it. This is someone who also used the full strength of his bully pulpit to support, endorse, condone, and push forth violence. So yeah, like, pardon me for being concerned and a little afraid, but like, if we got to throw these things, I'm ready. But I'm like, I really don't want you to run up on me because my ass going to jail. You not.
And that's the danger. And that's the danger. The dam, what they met before was a civilized person prepared to meet your dog, you know, under the ground, beneath the earth, self, with civilization. Now, this next time, you might not meet the civilized version of me. And I think that's the dam breaking, is that there are folks who are prepared to defend democracy, defend the constitutional election of Kamala Harris as the next president.
That's my thing.
And are willing
I'm gonna defend
to,
me.
of course, protect themselves and the people who are around them.
My family, my
you
friends.
Ain't gonna meet, you ain't gonna meet civilization, so don't get it twisted.
I have to assume that my life is in danger.
Yeah, I was about to say.
If you approaching me, I'm gonna assume my life is. If you approaching one of my friends, I gotta assume their life is in danger. And if you approaching somebody who looks like me, you approaching us. Because I can't leave anybody behind either.
Yeah.
So
Hello, Alabama.
Right.
Which
Wade
takes me
in the
back
water.
to Texas.
Yes.
And this question we're about to take
Fair enough.
from a listener.
Yeah.
Hey, Native Land Pod. This is Nikki from Brooklyn. Thank you guys for all of the work that you do. Your podcast is amazing. I have a minor request. So I know that the focus is the presidency, which it should be, but I also heard that there are a ton of seats that are up for re-election in the Senate. Could you guys do an episode on those seats that are up and the Democratic and progressive candidates that are on the ticket and who you think we should vote for in those states? I think that'll be super duper helpful. Everyone is just like laser focused on the presidency, which is super important. But I think keeping the Senate is also super important just in case the orange guy wins. Thanks. Bye.
That's such a good question. I hate the thought, but yes, that is a good question. Angela, I think we should accept that challenge and dive deep on some of those Senate races.
Maybe a mini pod.
Let's take time. Yeah, it could be. Yeah. Let's take the clip we saw earlier with Colin Allred, where we see in the state of Texas a remarkably close race.
Yeah.
That's enveloping there. And I would add to it, while we won't be able to do the deep dive on each of the Senate races in this episode at this moment, that we also ought to include some of these House seats that are looking vulnerable and stand in the way of Hakeem Jeffries' speakership, which I think all of us are rooting for. And I think we got to get real about what the possibilities are in that, especially if Kamala Harris wins, what kind of support she can look forward to getting her legislation.
If I can, I want to tap into some of these, though. There's one race in particular that we hadn't been talking about in Indiana. It was flagged for us by a viewer in our DMs. And there's a Black woman running in Indiana, almost has received no attention, I think in part because they decided that it's going to lean solidly Republican. I also want to flag for you all this Texas race with Senator Ted Cruz and Congressman Colin Allred that we played earlier. I think Colin has a really good chance. The other thing is there is a Michigan race where it's open. It's a toss-up by most polls. Sherrod Brown, who has a tremendous legacy in the Senate and has been in office for a long time, his seat is a toss-up. Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin, they're saying her seat is a toss-up. So all of these are important for you all to get out and vote for them. And then in Montana, maybe we got some Black listeners in Montana. Maybe we got some white folks, white people in Montana. John Tester is also at risk. So I would flag all of those. And then Ruben Gallegos, I think, is looking good in Arizona. They said that leans Democratic, and so is Jackie Rosen in Nevada. So there are some others, but those are the ones.
Did you talk about Alsa Brooks already?
Oh, Angela Alsa Brooks.
Yeah, Angela Alsa Brooks in Maryland.
We need that for history, and we also do not want to lose Maryland because we don't want to give that to Larry Hogan, who's, of course, the past governor. Right. And then lastly, and certainly not least, is Lisa Blunt Rochester in Delaware. That is likely.
I think she's going to pull it out.
I think she is too, but I just want to make sure we know that would also be a history-making seat. So even if you're not in Delaware, make sure you lift up those two Black women who would be joining the Senate ranks, only to become the 4th and 5th Black people in the Senate right now. That's Angela Alsa Brooks in Maryland and Lisa Blunt Rochester in Delaware.
Angela just did that in 0.2 seconds. She just rode through all of the Senate races.
If Angela Alsa Brooks and Lisa Blunt Rochester win, they would be the only two Black women in the Senate. Right now, we have none.
Right.
This woman in Indiana, when that viewer flagged her, we met her somewhere. I think we were at Essence Festival, and we met her and took a picture, and then she sent us that DM. I'll be honest, I had never heard of the woman running in Indiana. And I think the reason why, and this is something else that we have to disrupt, is the donor class is largely white and male. And they have been able to decide who they think is a viable candidate. But just consider, if they are if they are deputizing themselves as the gatekeepers of who will advance, they did that in Florida. And they had already decided that this white woman was the Democratic the heir apparent to be the Democratic nominee. The mainstream media had talked about that. When we all knew, that Andrew was gaining numbers there, and inarguably, some would say won that race. But certain sides have a propensity for meddling in elections. I know you get tired of hearing about it, Andrew. But a lot of people, our comments are all the time like, Andrew won, I voted for you, and they love you out the streets,
but
brother.
The point you're making is essential, which is who is the screener? That you know how they say you sift out, who is the sifter made of?
Right.
And the sifter is oftentimes made of people who do not share our lived experience, who don't know what it's like one day of the week to live like a regular person. And they're choosing the people who give them comfort.
Yep.
And so we've got to be mindful of that. But that's going to be our task. Can I say really quick? Post this election.
I'm sorry, because this would be a third Black woman in the Senate if we are able to help Valerie McCrae. That is the woman in Indiana. I wanted to make sure I got her name right. We have asked her to send in a video so that we can play it on Native Land Pod. Of course, Dr. McCrae, because she is a PhD as well, you are welcome to send that in at any point before the election. We would love to hear more from you in your platform. I do think that it is time out for the DSCC to have the stranglehold that it has on these races. They normally decide that Black people in areas that are not completely blue, and even in those instances, that they are not worth funding. And I think that has got to shift. There are Black people in there that want it to change, but they need more support. So that, hopefully when Hakeem is the Speaker of the House, he can, add a thumb to that scale. It has to change, and it needs to change yesterday. We don't know what would have happened if this very clearly educated Black woman who is from Indiana would have been given a shot. Just with some additional resources, what could have happened? But miracles do happen. So let's see what happens before election.
For our audience, the DSCC is the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, who is the campaign arm of the upper chamber in Congress, the Senate, and then you'll hear us sometimes reference the D-Trip or the DCCC, and that is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, which is the campaign arm of the lower chamber in Congress, the House.
And between those two committees, the biggest donors to the Senate and House races, respectively, that they deem to be competitive.
And they have a whole staff of people. They issue contracts to people. So this is why we're saying I understand there's a lot of frustration in the system, but you do have to participate in the system, even if your intention is to disrupt it. To understand it and then hold that door open and bring in other people so that our American political landscape can actually reflect America for the first time. So,
Angela, you taking us to
CTAs.
Oh, we done. Now it's time to say goodbye to all my Negro friends. That is so sad. Okay. Yeah, Andrew, watch it. Good Lord, have mercy.
You know.
Oh, my God.
I was about to spell Mickey Mouse.
M-I. I thought you said N-I. Oh.
Me too.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry.
Maybe I did, but maybe I didn't.
Maybe I didn't. Either way, y'all will never know. Here's what I want to talk about. For those of you who do know, if those of you who don't, it is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month. Last October, my mother turned 80, and with her 80th birthday, she also found a lump in her breast. A couple of weeks later, which would be my birthday, we were told that it was after the biopsy, it tested positive for cancer. She, at that time, had between stage 2 and stage 3 triple negative breast cancer. My mom is a no-limit soldier, okay? Because as we sit here today, she is breast cancer free. But why I wanted to, cancer free, period. But why I wanted to bring that story up, you all, is because she was on Facebook. My dad calls her Facebook Fanny because she's on there quite a bit. She was on Facebook, and one of her friends, her former OBGYN, Dr. Anita Connell, had posted during National Breast Cancer Awareness Month to make sure that you're doing your self-check exams, that you're getting your mammograms. And my mom did a self-check and felt something strange. So my mom was immediately responsive. She doesn't play about her health. We don't know how long it had been there, but she got that reminder from Dr. Connell last year, and she checked. I'm telling y'all right now, NLP fam, I want to be accountable to you. I'm overdue for my mammogram. My birthday present to myself this month, National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, will be to go and get a mammogram. And I will be accountable to you all in that way. I ask you to join me in doing that and tell the women in your lives to please make sure they go and get checked as well. Do those self-exams in the shower that feel weird, where everything feels lumpy. Do that too. But get those mammograms and get them on time.
Wow.
And make sure that you look and see how to do it. Because if you have dense breasts, You know, like you can feel stuff in there, and it's like a 2-finger method that you do. Angela, I don't know if I ever told you this, but I also felt a lump when well, first of all, let me say we love Mama Rye. Y'all have gotten to meet Mama Rye on the show when they came to get their tickets during the Congressional Black Caucus annual legislative conference. Yes. And she looks so amazing. And go to Angela's Instagram because there's so many pictures. My favorite picture of you and your mom is when you're fixing her shoe at the ALC dinner. But her mom is so beautiful and so sweet. So Mama Rye, we love you and happy that you're still with us. I gave myself an exam and felt a lump. And I'm just kind of ignorant about my body, to be honest. I didn't know all of it. And so they said, oh, we need to do a biopsy. And I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know what that meant. I thought like, okay, you going to rub my nipple with a Q-tip or something? Like, I don't know what that meant. So when I got there and I had to like undress and she like brought out a needle. I'm like, well, where's the needle going? And so they took a biopsy. It turned out to be nothing. It was like some like mindless cyst, and they put something in there. So in case I feel something again, they'll know, oh, that's what that is. It's no worries. But the fact that I just had no clue. It was fine. I got it checked out. It's okay. But we are so quick to dismiss our own health in favor of other people. We are so quick to normalize our own pain. And sometimes our doctors are so quick to dismiss our pain. So if you feel something and you want to be checked out and you ask your doctor, well, I want this. They say, oh, that's not necessary. You don't need that test. Always say, well, do you mind just putting that in writing? So when my family asks about it, I want to be able to say what you did. Because when you ask a doctor to put something in writing, they get real nervous.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, and you have every right as a patient to say, yeah, can you shoot that to me in an email? Before you leave, you want that in writing while you're not getting the test. But I love that CTA, and we're blessed to have Mama Rye still with us. Yes. Andrew, what's your CTA?
Well, I love that CTA as well. And I just wanted to reference CNN host Sarah Seidner. Is that right?
Sarah Seidner.
Yeah. Sarah Seidner did a sit down with two of her best friends, names that we will know. I know one was Ananda Lewis,
the former host
we remember.
of Teen Summit.
Yep, Teen Summit, which we remember of some of us from back in the day.
Yes.
And I thought it was very powerful. Stephanie Elam, also also a CNN. I don't know if she's a host or contributor, but
she's a reporter.
Either way, reporter, beautiful, but also heart-wrenching and devastating, and made me lift all three of them in prayer simultaneously and watching their stories about breast cancer. I think all three of their stories were that they found it through self-examinations, which is, I believe, not necessarily recommended in the medical community as much anymore. They want you to come in and get those exams.
No, Andrew, that's not. Hold on. I want to correct that real quick.
It's in the story that I looked at from them yesterday that it wasn't.
That's not true.
No, you still
they encourage you to do self-exams. That's not the only kind of exam. Every year we should get annual physicals, and during those annual physicals, you do them as well. But they tell you to regularly self-check.
Yeah, I apologize for that. I misheard it, but the annual exam was what I was referring to with your doctors. But anyway, my point was to say it was a beautiful example of sisterhood, the way they held each other. Obviously devastating to see all three of those women going through what they're going through. But I lift them all in prayer, and all of you who are fighting similar battles. My only CTA is to invite those folks in the cities that we are visiting upcoming. Come out, see us, check us out, check out the show, and help us grow. Continue to help us grow so that as a community we continue to rise.
Amen.
I love that. We'll see you in the day swap. My only CTA is inspired by Angela's. Just imagine going about your life. Everything is fine. You stressed out over things. You mad about something. And then you get a diagnosis. Then you start feeling unwell. Like, it is such a blessing to have your health. All the things that stress us out. And then one day your entire world is rocked. I have a friend whose wife was diagnosed with brain tumors. I've lost people in life. So just take a moment to appreciate your health and maintain your health. Our body is our temple.
I receive that.
Yes, that is my only CTA. And we will see you Saturday in the Date SWAT. If you all have recommendations, and this is serious, on where we need to go eat in the Date SWAT, let us know. I know Angela want me to say we want to support some Black-owned businesses there.
We don't do nothing else.
So drop Drop your Black-owned restaurants in Detroit where we need to go eat while we're there. And then do we want to tell them where else we're going to be, or we want to wait on that?
Well, there's actually a graphic up already on social. We will be in Atlanta next week for Spellhouse Homecoming. And of course, as the honorary rattler and the main rattler.
Yeah.
Right, we're going to be at FAMU. And of course, we're waiting, but we may be coming to another city near you right before Election Day. And we'll be broadcasting live Election Day for what we believe will be a historical night.
And I'm excited to see our friend Albert at Spellhouse Homecoming. I'm only saying that because he always says, don't reference me, don't mention my name on your podcast. I'm just being a troll.
Albert.
And saying, hey, Albert.
Who,
Albert Sanders.
Albert said don't call his
yes.
name?
Hey,
Albert.
Albert.
Oh, man.
Oh,
Albert
you know
be
what?
tripping.
I'm really about to tell it all because, Albert, I also told
Welcome
you
home, Albert.
that you need to be at some of these events because you are a former member of the White House counsel's office. If there was anybody that could talk to us about how to preserve voting rights, ensure that people's voting rights are protected and that they know their rights from an election protection standpoint, it is you, good brother. So take my challenge as love.
Who you talking about,
Albert Sanders.
Yes, Albert.
Well, Albert Sanders.
Albert was who you...
Yes. Albert Sanders at the National Basketball Association.
See,
you went
Albert,
far.
I didn't say all that. That was Angela.
He was at the White House Counsel's office. He used to work for the
Welcome
Senate
home,
Judiciary
Albert.
Committee. He worked at
Thank you,
Google.
girl.
That's true. I'm telling all his business.
Yeah.
Albert
is dope, y'all. That's our boy. We proud of you, so don't be texting us and getting no attitude.
If you text me
love
and get
you.
an
Welcome
attitude,
home
I
to
promise to block you.
everybody, especially Albert. See y'all
All
later.
right. Well, before we end the show, I just want to remind everyone to leave us a review and please subscribe to Native Land Pod. We're available on all platforms and YouTube. I'll tell y'all, I'll be up late looking at the YouTube comments, and I see y'all always saying, y'all don't never shout out YouTube. Shout out YouTube. We see y'all. Next time, I'll remember your names and your handles to shout you out, but I have been seeing those comments, so we do appreciate you all. As you know, episodes drop every Thursday. You can follow us on social media. We have mini pods, episodes that drop every Monday, which we're about to do right now. We are your hosts, Tiffany Cross, Angela Wright, Andrew Gillum. Welcome home, y'all. There are 19 days until the election.
That is not enough damn
Do
days.
something.
Jesus
Do
Christ.
something. Do something.
Oh.
Thank you for joining the natives. Intentional with the info on all of the latest. Rod Gillum and Cross connected to the statements that you leave on our socials. Thank you sincerely for the patience. Reason for your choice is clear. We're so grateful. Took the oath to execute roles. Yeah, faithful. Preserve, defend, and protect the truth. Even if painful. Welcome home to all of the natives. We thank you.
Welcome home, y'all.
What's
Welcome
up,
home.
sis?
Native Land Pod is a production of iHeartRadio in partnership with Reason Choice Media. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.